privilege to be here with you all this evening. So just a little bit about my background. I'm going to skip most of the formalities because of our time constraints. Plus I don't really like talking about that stuff too much. You'll get to know me, as I present. But just a little bit. It's hard to categorize what I do exactly. It's hard to put it in a box and give it a good title. So best I've come up with so far is full-time volunteer. I recently invented the term community facilitator. That's getting a little bit closer to what I actually do. But basically I'm in the full-time service of humanity. I'm completely 100% dedicated to this path. And the only thing that I really did differently than most of my peers at the time was when I was 19 or 20, I had a realization in my senior year of college at New York University. I'm from New York City originally. I realized that this so-called traditional path that I was pursuing of career, retirement, all of that kind of stuff was not going to provide the meaning and fulfillment. And I realized that a self-exploration would. Ultimately, service came into that realization. And I find exactly that, even though I don't have a lot of possessions, I don't have a lot of things, I live very simply, very humbly. At the same time, there's quite a wealth that comes into my life, quite a level of abundance. Spiritually, fulfillment-wise, I feel very fulfilled as a human being. And even just my activities within the U.S., it's really incredible what's happened. I came to the U.S. after this 2-year journey abroad, which we'll talk about, feeling like I should share about the experience. And I didn't have any dates set up, no events were really planned arriving here. I also didn't have the budget for the trip. And through just various conversations and sharing that I wanted to present like this, various people expressed interest. And I started in New York. I've been to Tennessee, I've been to Las Vegas, Chicago, Detroit. I'm here now, I'm missing a few other places. I'll be in Santa Barbara, I'll be in Los Angeles. Just all of this has organically unfolded. And I find this happening quite a bit in my life now because of this full-time dedication to my own path, my own artist path, that somehow things really line up beautifully as a result of that. So that's one of the themes of this completely 100% dedicated to this path. And the only thing that I really did differently than most of my peers at the time was when I was 19 or 20, I had a realization in my senior year of college at New York University. I'm from New York City originally. I realized that this so-called traditional path that I was pursuing of career, retirement, all of that kind of stuff was not going to provide the meaning and fulfillment. And I realized that a self-exploration would. Ultimately, service came into that realization. And I find exactly that, even though I don't have a lot of possessions, I don't have a lot of things, I live very simply, very humbly. At the same time, there's quite a wealth that comes into my life, quite a level of abundance. Spiritually, fulfillment-wise, I feel very fulfilled as a human being. And even just my activities within the U.S., it's really incredible what's happened. I came to the U.S. after this 2-year journey abroad, which we'll talk about, feeling like I should share about the experience. And I didn't have any dates set up, no events were really planned arriving here. I also didn't have the budget for the trip. And through just various conversations and sharing that I wanted to present like this, various people expressed interest. And I started in New York. I've been to Tennessee, I've been to Las Vegas, Chicago, Detroit. I'm here now, I'm missing a few other places. I'll be in Santa Barbara, I'll be in Los Angeles. Just all of this has organically unfolded. And I find this happening quite a bit in my life now because of this full-time dedication to my own path, my own artist path, that somehow things really line up beautifully as a result of that. So that's one of the themes of this presentation. I'm here in the U.S. primarily to awaken that in others, because I think we're all looking for that during this time. We're looking for a renewed sense of purpose and a renewed sense of meaning. And we're starting to understand that really comes from following our own hearts. So I've called this presentation the effortless presentation, because what I find is that when we are, let's hope this comes up. I'm never shutting it down. Let's see. Yes, okay. So this is okay here? Do I need to be wearing this in some way or like this?
No, I'm fine with
okay,
I'm fine.
Okay, yeah, great. What I find over and over again is that when we are following our calling, listening to our hearts, following our hearts, there are many ways to term that thing, is that life becomes truly effortless. I've been engaged in a number of activities overseas over the past couple of years. I've been engaged in a number of activities in the U.S. over the past 3 months, traveling this place, that place, meeting new people, new environments, presenting with kids, all of this stuff, a lot of work. But I couldn't actually say it feels like work, and it's because it's coming from my heart, it's really coming from my heart. And when we're coming from that place, in whatever way that shows up, for me it's doing these activities abroad in poor communities, but it can be through your music, it can be through your gardening, whatever the project. You find that it's something that's moving through you versus something that you're personally doing yourself. That's another thing that we'll come back to again and again throughout this presentation. And certainly that principle has guided all of my service work for the past 2 years. It guides my entire life. It is underneath all of the projects that we're going to be talking about. So maybe when Jayesh Bhai was here, he's fond of this distinction that he introduced me to. It's a brilliant distinction. He always talks about the process and the project and the difference between those two things. The project is the excuse to get together to allow some unfolding to occur. That's a really important concept to understand when we're doing humanitarian work, because sometimes we're going into poor communities that have real challenges and we're working on the project. We think something needs to get done. And our beneficiaries may be down here, they may be orphan children, they may be widows, they may be lepers, whatever the case may be. And here we come with all the resources, the money, the skills and know-how, and we may think we're on a higher plane than they are, and we're really project focused. We need to heal, we need to fix, we need to get something done. And what I find in that model, which is actually a very common model, especially here in the West and in a lot of humanitarian work, is that something very, very fundamental gets missed in the process. Service to me is always about a mutual exchange of giving and receiving, and that is the process that's within the project, and we'll come back to that theme as well. So I want to start with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. This quote really summarizes my approach to service, and this is coming from Vinoba Bhave's book, Moved by Love. And when he gave this quote from Mahatma Gandhi, he said that Gandhiji's entire service philosophy was wrapped up in this statement. It is very, very important. So he's saying, in the end, all our efforts come to zero. In the end, all of our efforts come to zero, meaning there can be no sustainable change in the external world. We're born and then we die. There's a sunrise and then there's a sunset. We live in a dualistic relative reality. So, practically speaking, if I go build a school for 200 children in a slum in Nairobi, and I'm feeling well happy about this, it's going to benefit all these children, this big success story, people are going to be proud of me, pats on the back, and all of that stuff. I know, and I think Mahatma Gandhi knows, that when the last nail goes into the construction of that building, it is the day that that school begins to vanish. This house will not be here forever. So this is the understanding that Gandhi is tapping into here. And it really informs our work because we start to let go of the outcome. That's exactly what he's saying here. So if all our efforts come to zero, all of our humanitarian efforts come to zero, then what do? Just sit home all day, twiddle our thumbs, become passive? Absolutely not. We serve lovingly, meaning we share our gift from the heart in the moment, and then we leave it at that. Meaning we don't concern ourselves with the outcome. We don't concern ourselves with the result, because the result's not sustainable. So again, it's all about the moment. It's all about the exchange that's happening in the moment. This is a very powerful concept, and it guided all of his service work, which I find just fascinating because he was very politically active at the same time. So yeah, just really, really important concept. Okay, and this is very much related. This is something I came up with the other day. We become impressive by what we acquire, inspirational by what we give away. It's another very important distinction. Impressive people, a lot of degrees, fancy cars, fancy clothes, Rolex watch, traveling the world first class, and all of that kind of stuff. We meet somebody like that and they tell us these things, impressive, wow. But the inspirational person I find much more interesting. This is the individual that gives everything away, not only possessions, but more importantly, their personality, their false sense of self. This is a person who really casts themselves into the fire and gets rid of all the false aspects of who they are and really expresses who they are completely authentically. That person becomes so inspirational that there is nothing he or she needs to do to create change. The presence alone creates the change. You see this with saints and sages throughout all of the ages. They don't need to do a thing to help humanity. It's who they are. It's what they embody. And it has to do with what they've given away. So another very important concept. And I find service is very much a destination to this end. So what hasn't been mentioned, which I have been referring to just casually, is the fact that I was just overseas for 2 years. So that's basically the reason why we're here. I had this long journey. I left the country January 2011. I traveled to India. I was there for the year. Then I traveled to East Africa. I was in Kenya from January until June of this year. Then I moved on to Rwanda for 3 months. So it was about a 20-month journey, 3 countries, 2 different continents. And I put this this dollar amount in here. I don't think it's so much relevant for this audience, but I put it in here for others because it doesn't cost a lot of money to pursue your dreams. Okay, it really does not cost a lot of money. Money is not the factor in the equation. If you're interested in pursuing life from the heart, some people think it requires a lot of money. Like, how am I going to get rid of my day job? How am I going to sustain myself? And what I always want to say is that should not be your concern. The money should not be your concern. It's the commitment and the dedication that should be your concern. If the commitment and dedication is there, the money will also be there for you to carry out your mission, always. And over 6,000 lives were touched as a result of all the projects that I was involved in, somehow benefited, directly impacted. That's a big number. And I didn't go overseas thinking, let's help 6,000 people. That was not the idea whatsoever. It just happened on its own. It was waiting to happen. So that's why I use the word facilitation. Okay, when I show up, there's a change that's waiting to happen already. I just happen to be the lucky one to help bring it into being. Okay, it's like a midwife in a way. So that uncovers a spiritual concept, right? That I'm not the doer, right? There's not ego involved. And practically speaking, for all of us involved in service, that really ties into your project's sustainability. Because if you're approaching your service work from that perspective, it's a community issue. It's not something that you're forcing upon the community or whoever the beneficiary is. It's something that wants to happen already. And we'll come back to this when we talk about my projects in New York. And all of the projects that I tend to launch and get involved with, they continue even if I'm not present in the country that I started the project in. And it's for this reason, that it's something that was already there that wanted to happen, and I just pushed it along. So I'm just going to touch, it's funny you said that we'd be focusing on Africa. That's actually not the case. I'm going to focus more on the story in India and a little bit on Africa. So I'm just going to touch on what I did in Rwanda. So, I mean, has anybody been to Rwanda or East Africa in this room? Okay. So if we're knowing about Rwanda, we're putting it in the context usually of the 1994 genocide, right? Are we all familiar with the 1994 genocide? So I'm not going to go over the history of it too much. But that was the clash, if you can put it that way, between the Hutus and the Tutsis, right? And over the course of 100 days, 1 million Tutsis lost their lives, and that's an approximation. And the big issue that this caused in the country, if you can even start to rank it, was the issue with the orphans. So Rwanda still to this day has the highest percentage of orphan children in the world. Something like 900,000 orphan children. Actually, these would be young adults now. And it's, of course, because of the genocide. And a lot of these survivors, we call them orphan survivors because they literally survived the genocide if they were a child at the time. Women and children were a particular target. So if a child survived at that time, it means that he or she either hid in the roof somewhere or hid in some contained space for weeks, on end, or they were beaten and left for dead and somehow miraculously survived. And the issue that has resulted from experiencing that event and loss of parents, loss of family members, just the chaos that was going on in the country, the fear and everything, is what we would term PTSD here in this country, post-traumatic stress disorder. This is what the veterans typically come home with when they see things that no human being should have to see. So what happens is, they hear a loud sound, all of a sudden they're reminded of gunshots, the fear happens and people become hysterical, lose their mind, go running away. And this is the situation for students at this secondary school I supported in Rwanda. So I'll share this gentleman's story to put this all into context, what he experienced, and just give you a taste for what I was up to in this country. And I have a lot of background in traditional medicine and psychology. So this was working around trauma symptoms, counseling, therapeutic counseling, and really compassionate listening to these stories. So this boy's name is Innocent. He would have been 5 or 6 years old at the time of the genocide. This photo is in 2009. He would have been 15 or 16 at the time. And what he was sharing with me here during this interview, and you all will understand what we were doing here since you get the power of sharing. We were really allowing these students at the school just to share their stories without anybody trying to intervene, fix, heal, make the story any different. Just air it out in a safe, loving space. That can be very transformative for somebody who's experiencing trauma symptoms, and transformative for anybody. What he shared with me was the fact that he witnessed both of his parents get murdered in front of his eyes. And these murders were carried out with machetes. And then he himself was beaten and left for dead. He was thrown on top of a pile of bodies that also included his 2 dead parents. He laid there for 3 days, 3 or 4 days, and then on the 3rd or 4th day, somebody miraculously saw him, came upon him, saw that he was still breathing, literally rescued, literally saved his life. And he's sharing, this story with me in the space. He's a student now. He's experiencing trauma symptoms. He's in class. He's reminded of the images that he saw his parents being hacked to pieces, the fear, all of this stuff. And there's more to this story, but I just want to give you a taste for, what I was up to in Rwanda. It was basically listening to these stories and helping these very, very traumatized students, do a little bit of healing work so they could focus in class. It's a really big issue even to this day, 18 years later, because the country doesn't have a mental health system. And even genocide survivors face a certain stigma as the country tries to develop and modernize. They're sort of pushed aside and not given the resources they need really to recover. That's not always the case, but certainly can be. And then just a couple photos to show you some of the scars they bear. So that's a machete wound to his skull here. That probably should have killed him. To her face. I didn't meet this young lady, but it just gives you an idea for what happened there. And this was in 2009. Experiencing these stories really, really changed my life. It was the first time hearing stories of this magnitude, so powerful, being in a poor village like I was, and it really was it catapulted me into the lifestyle that I'm leading now. Okay, so hold on a second. So Rwanda is where I just got back from, but in a way it's where this journey started. Like I was just sharing, I was there in 2009. It really launched me into this work that I'm doing now. But I was in Kenya before I went to Rwanda this year. Nairobi means cold water in the Maasai language. So the Maasai are a very famous tribe in Kenya. It's a Maasai elder, Maasai lady. They're really known for their beadwork here. And these are their traditional manyatas. I put this in here for a reason. There's a very interesting quirk about this tribe, and I know that other indigenous cultures do the same thing. They can't do this now because they don't have the land that they used to have because the country's become so developed. But they used to just roam non-stop. They would not stay in any location for more than a week or so, 7 or 10 days, something like that. And wherever they stayed, they would put up a compound like this. It can be thrown up very, very quickly. It's just made from whatever they have around. And then when it comes time to leave, they just leave, their compound. And I find my lifestyle is very similar to this, where I don't have a fixed residence. I'm always traveling. And I really see the value of living life in this way, because every day is brand new. There's no such thing as a routine, because I know when we're going to work we have to be at work at 9 a.m., we come home at 5 p.m., we have dinner at 8 p.m., we go to sleep, repeat. We get into a routine, right? And the magic tends to leave our life. I don't think that's an accident. Things are set up that way. So there's really something brilliant to this concept of just always on the go. And even your person, where you're living, it's just a temporary residence until you go on to the next destination. I think it's a very powerful idea that this tribe was tapping into. And again, they can't really do this because now you have big cities all over the place, and a Maasai tribe, like many other indigenous cultures, is under persecution from the Kenyan government. That's a long story that we don't have time to get into. But I want to focus again very briefly on this. It was a development project in Nairobi, in a slum in Nairobi. So the issue that we were working around is this. There is no free education system in Kenya. There are government-run schools, but even with the government-run schools, there are still fees. You have to pay admissions, you have to pay for lunch, you have to pay for your school uniform, and I think there's a maintenance fee as well. And the government will say that they're very, very low compared to private schools. Very true. And implementing these schools, more children are going to school. The children who are being left out, though, are the children who I was working with in the slums, children coming from families who are earning about $1 per day. They cannot go to school. Any one of those fees that I just mentioned immediately rules out any child from the slums of Nairobi or any poor village from going to school and getting their basic education. And we all know what happens to children who do not receive their basic education. Basically, life is going to be resigned to poverty. Likelihood for crime goes up, likelihood for violence goes up, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, prostitution with girls. You know, it all revolves around education, also health. You know, health and education really are the two keys that break the poverty cycle. So what I did was help support this school called Brosis. Karibu is like your namaste, it means welcome, and Brosis is brothers and sisters. This is a school that is responding to this issue with no free education for poor kids. They provide truly free education to about 70 kids now from this particular slum in Nairobi. And how they do it is just, it defies logic, it defies reason, because on the books they are not sustainable. Every month it's a challenge to pay the rent. They have 5 teachers. All the teachers earn about $1 a day as well, $30 a month. It's a challenge to pay them. It's a challenge to give the kids lunch, which they sometimes do. Most of the time they do not. They should not be open, okay? But they've been open for 4 years, and if you even look at their history, they've expanded. They started in this very small space with a one-room school with a few kids. Now they're in a large compound. They have several structures, and they have 70 students. And you know, the question is, how in the world does this happen? And the reason is because of the grace that comes from the selflessness from the teachers, the selflessness of the headmaster, the pure love, because they know what's going to happen to these kids in the slum. So that mother's love, that calling to serve, being moved by love, they started this space, you know, totally selflessly. And as a result, the resources that they need have been there. Even though, you know, every single month it's a struggle, they've been open for 4 years. I think that's just so remarkable and so amazing. And it was the reason why I was attracted to this school, because I knew there was something to it. I knew there was a spirit. I knew there was a high level of generosity. They're trying to impart good values. And so I helped support this school for about 6 months. And I'll show you what we did. I'm just going to touch on this speaker system in a second. We'll let the headmaster introduce the school on his own. So let's see this.
Process Center is the center of children who really comes from very background, very poor families, and most of them we try to bring them to school, integrate them within the community, and we look forward to giving them the basic education like any other child anywhere, and also try to give hope to that child that he or she can be the best in life.
Okay. Because of time, I'm going to skip over Mike's story. But here's what we did. Here was the state of the school. Let me back up just a second. So that was the headmaster of the school, Abel. And in terms of the school sustainability, let me tell you what he does. He takes work outside of the school. So he's a headmaster, you know, he's there on a daily basis. And then sometimes he'll just excuse himself, put on his construction suit, go take casual labor, take the money that he earns, and it goes into the school. Abel earns no income on his own. His wife actually has a small store in the slum. She sells, you know, t-shirts and things like that, and she's the one that puts food on the table. And that's what I mean about the sense of sacrifice and generosity. Abel has his education. He could be living elsewhere. I visited his house a number of times, very small room, one room, you know, in a slum, and it's because of the love that's in his heart that he puts all of his work into this project. I think we all really understand, you know, where that's coming from. It's really, really beautiful. Oh, okay. So here is the state of school. The state of the school when I arrived. These structures are very typical in the slums of Nairobi. Just iron sheets, tree branches from across the street. Very cheap to put up. and you can throw them up in a couple of days. You can see the structure was not complete when I arrived. Just 2 walls were made out of trash bags. We've seen these before, the bare earth floors. So the idea with this project, I call it a value-based beautification. I was really, at the time, into the idea of environmental psychology, how positive, warm, loving environments, especially where there's art, clean environments as well, have a direct impact on human behavior. I really feel that when you beautify an environment, it's a shortcut for making a change in human behavior. There's a famous story of the police commissioner in New York City who started beautifying subway stations, and all of a sudden was able to reduce crime dramatically, in troubled stations just by beautifying the area. It's a really interesting concept to look into. I don't have time to go into it tonight. So here's what we did. We fixed up the school. We painted murals. These were value-based murals, meaning there's messages in here about nature, why connection to nature is important. This is not just to look good. There's conscious intent going into the art, which creates an ambiance. It creates a vibration that kids can feel, especially kids relate to art very, very profoundly. And then we also use it as a teaching tool because the kids are outside, and if they're being disrespectful of nature, we can point to the mural and do a lesson on that. School has a vision of unity. This is what this half is about. Tuko Pamoja is like Hum Sab Ek Hai. It means we're together or we're one. We have the brothers and sisters around the world. I even did Skype sessions with the students at Brosis and students that I taught in India. They exchanged pen pals with the classroom in California. And this was the finished product. We planted this garden out front. Again, very much tied to our love of nature value. The classrooms, making them more look like classrooms. This is a quote from Satya Sai Baba: "Love all, serve all, help ever, hurt never." I firmly believe having these symbols on your actual structure makes a difference in the environment. We planted a farm. We had the kids involved with the actual plantation. Again, teaching lessons about Pancho likes this, of course. Teaching lessons about nature. This also was for the school sustainability, because they have a hard time putting food on the table for lunch, so we can grow our own food and harvest our own crops. And then hopefully, we haven't gotten there yet, but maybe in the future when we get really good with the farm, we can even harvest crops to be sold on the market. Planted trees. This is very Manasadhana right here. Naming the trees. Ukweli means truth. That was my tree. I always use sanitation in my programs because of the decentralized leadership that it creates. What that means is, if you have children cleaning a space, or anybody cleaning a space for 3 or 4 hours, getting it beautiful and immaculate, somebody from the outside comes into your space, litters, who's the police officer? You guys are, right? That's decentralized leadership. President Paul Kagame does this in Rwanda as well, on a national level. They have a national day of sanitation in Rwanda. I learned this after I was doing my sanitation programs, and it's for the exact same reason. He wants to create decentralized leadership, so his people are not just looking to the government to solve everything. And this is a very indirect and direct way to go about it. So every Wednesday became our Usafi Day. Usafi means cleaning. It's just like Safai. And kids love this. I love cleaning. I enjoy the task myself. So this wasn't drudgery for the kids. We were enjoying ourselves. We were singing. We were dancing. The kids were like, they said stuff like, "Collect the litter, find it. Collect the litter, find it." We're marching down the street like this in the public space. People are seeing us. And that can create, the ripple effect. All these people in public, what in the world is going on in this school? And they're cleaning up trash that, that could maybe inspire them to do the same. I don't know if that happened, but that's the importance of doing the seva and the service in the public space. It can inspire others, to carry on with that experiment in some interesting way. And I always came back to this: whose school is this, guys? Whose school is this? And I kept making the point, it was their school. It's your school. If it's your school, you have responsibility for it. You have responsibility for the upkeep of your school. Because the first thing that goes when you're living in a slum, that filthy slum that has sanitation problems, your care. You do not care about sanitation living in a slum when the trash is piled up, when people are going to the bathroom wherever they want. You stop caring. You won't pursue your dream either. So if that happens, if you lose that psychological ability, you stop caring about your life. Life is totally going to be resigned to poverty. Of course, it makes sense. You won't pursue your dream, and you just continue that negative pattern. So sanitation is a very good way to go about breaking that pattern. And I'm talking seriously with you guys here, okay? But if we have the good fortune of meeting one another in the field, you're not going to meet this, it'll be the same person, right? But I'm having a good time. This is my life's work. I really enjoy being in slum environments and teaching kids like this. I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but they don't bother me because this is all flowing from my heart. I mean, just look at here. This was just wrapping up a day, and we were doing a sanitation program, hanging out with the kids, you know, singing a song. And, you know, we can take service very seriously. We think we need to get something done, right? But really, I have to be honest with you guys that the transformation comes through the love, just being casual and, you know, playing and everything. And yes, okay, if a serious activity like sanitation happens after that, great. But incorporate, you know, the connection, the heart-to-heart connection. Because ultimately it affects the project's sustainability. Because after I leave, right, are they going to continue to care about all of these changes? Absolutely. And that was the report I got from the school, that the care went up after I left. It didn't decline. And you have the opposite situation happening a lot of the times, where some organization will go to a country, build a school, build a water well. They don't do this. They're not connecting with everybody, step away. And then all of a sudden the villagers or whoever have this project and they're like, okay, we don't know what to do with this, and the project loses its sustainability. So love is a very, very powerful force on many different levels, and if you need a practical one, a more left brain one, it's the sustainability piece. Okay. So if we're talking about a practical bottom line impact of these changes, the beautification to the environment and all the teaching I did with the kids, we had a 300% increase in enrollment. The school we started with 20 some students, I think it was like 21 or 22. We ended with over 60, and it's up to 70 now after I left. What was happening was the vibration of the school changed. All the art you saw, I think I have it here actually. This is the entrance gate. Okay, we're in a slum, you don't see this. You do not see this. We're really sticking out. So before they didn't have this, it was just open, and we didn't have the sign here, Brosis Integrated Community Center. So people were passing by and didn't know what was happening in there. So with these changes, and we're out dancing, the drum is happening, people are passing by wondering what in the world is going on in this crazy place. They walk in, they talk to the teachers or the headmaster, and they, that person gets informed that this is a free school for kids in the slum. Oh, I have 2 or 3 or 4 kids, whatever. Can they come? Absolutely, yes. They can come. And some of those children were able to pay some school fees, some token. We try to be adamant about some token fee, so it's not always free, because if it's always free, as you know, then there's no parental buy-in. The parents will look at the school as a daycare center, and it encourages bad behavior sometimes. Manasadhana is very, very good about that. I don't know of too many times where they're giving 100% handout. What I experienced always was a 70-30% split, or some token. So you have something, even from a family who earns $1 a day, or whatever the case is, here is 1 rupee. I care enough about this to give you a rupee. It's very, very important, because sometimes you think, oh, it's so tough, their life is so hard, and they just need a handout. It's really more empowering to have that token fee process.
What is the second side of the door?
Brosis here?
Yeah.
That means brothers and sisters.
And
so
what is that symbol for?
This?
Yeah.
This is from the Kenyan flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is obviously my input here. Okay, so we're about 35 minutes. Great. Okay, perfect. So I want to spend a little bit more time on this next project here. So we're going to watch a 5-minute video, and then I'll explain what we did.
This area, slums are neglected. The government hand is not seen anywhere, in the sense that the government does not even know what is happening here. They are not concerned about the people living. So that's why we feel as a community, as people working in this community, we have the obligation of taking the solutions into our hand and trying to improve this area.
Being the chairman of this area gives me a hard task, because you realize most of the times that the people you're leading are people who lack knowledge and information about so many other things. Personally, I volunteer being the chairman of this area. I'm not being paid by anybody, but because of the desire from my heart to make sure that some people here are protected and they know what they're supposed to do. That is why I volunteer my time day and night to work for them.
These are also the type of toilets whereby the children from Malaysia use them, and it is like a public toilet. So everyone is using the toilet, which is not healthy for the young kids. See inside how it is made. It's like this. Yeah. Yes, boy, I've been living in this community for the last 10 years, but I saw these kids are suffering. They are just being left. Like the mother said, they go for casual labor, for casual work, and I saw it better for me to just open a daycare, of which I do take care of them, I teach them. It is a volunteer work because I'm just taking care of them, and they are not doing anything. The space is very much split. Even there is no light, there is no window, and I just keep them here because this is the much I can afford to be. Yeah.
This one here is preparing fries. French fries.
That's what I mean about kids not going to school. They'll be out on the street earning instead.
But people must do it because it's you must earn a living.
The drainage we saw right inside slum. If you want
Coming from this hospital is called Pumwani. This is one of the trenches that we'll be working on. It's shared by the houses along this line, and it's shared by several houses upstream.
the water coming from up, this particular coin is coming up with the fecal matter. So you can imagine waking up in the morning, and then at the end of the day, the first thing you see in your doorstep is this kind of situation. Fecal matters in your doorstep, and all that stuff in your doorstep. So it demoralizes you.
This is a sample of a house in this particular setup. So you look like this is where someone takes a shower, this is someone where he takes cooks his food and everything. You get that more than 7 people are living in here, and all of them are sleeping here. Our trench is right here, and it's stagnated. So when it rains, you are expecting that water will definitely enter into this house.
Or you have children who will just come out and play in the alleyways. Sometimes they have shoes, sometimes not. And again, we're right near that the sewage problem. Okay. After my tour of that slum and seeing the sewage issue, that was the focus of that video, being told about the dynamics in this slum, the prostitution, the crime, the drugs, I was having a meeting with the two community leaders who you saw there, Grace and Kalanzo, and they asked me just point blank, Chris, what should we do here? Because they heard about my work, my humanitarian work, and they were looking for advice. And I was completely overwhelmed by what I saw. I had never seen anything like that before in my life, even in the slums of India. I was silenced. I was completely silenced. So, I didn't really have anything smart to say. So what I said was this. I said these exact words. I don't know, but I do know that love is the answer. And I meant that with all of my heart in that moment. And just keep that phrase in mind as I describe what unfolded from this project we agreed to work on. So you had the situation, like you saw in the video, where all of these homes in this slum have this stagnating sewage situation. You all know why. There's no bathrooms, there's no sanitation system, there's no sewage system, and when it rains, that waste has to go somewhere. It just piles up, okay? And then it rains, the rain mixes with all of that waste and has nowhere to go. So it just piles up next to homes. So you have the situation here, there are 50,000 people in this particular slum. Around 600 or 700 homes, we weren't sure of the exact number, had this kind of problem. Right outside, a river, literally a river, 5 or 6 inches deep of raw sewage that includes human waste. and also that pathogenic sewage that was draining from the nearby hospital. This was literally killing people because the children, they're walking around this stuff barefoot, they're putting their hands in there, they don't know what's going on, they think it's something to play with. Obviously the waterborne illnesses that come from a situation like this, it was the most urgent need they said they had in this community. So I said, okay, well, let's try to do something about this. Now, I had all of the money for my living expenses, airfare, some program expenses. I did not have the money for this project. The budget for this was close to $7,000. I didn't know where the money was going to come from. But that never stops me from moving forward, taking the few steps that I can take within my ability. I take those steps. Even though I'm thinking, there's not a lot of hope here. My operation is really small. I have less than 500 friends on Facebook, although I'm about to go over 500, but right now it's less than 500. My email list, less than 200 people. And just, small networks. But what I always say when I'm getting to this point, it does not matter. It does not matter. If God wants this project done, it will be done one way or the other. And I really, truly believe that. So what you need to do is take those first few steps. See how far you can go on your own, and then if you get stuck, maybe something else will happen. But take the first step, even if you don't have the money. So that's what I did. I created that video that you saw, a longer version of it, without the activism. Okay, just showing the situation. It's very easy to show something like that and get angry about it. Something should be done here, and the campaigning, and that's really where the ego kicks in. And you can be very successful doing that because other people's egos will get involved and say, yes, something has to be done about that. And I don't want to come from that place at all. This is more about sharing lovingly, sharing honestly, right from the heart. So just showing that situation like I did with you all, our proposed solution, there's a sustainability plan in place, and if you feel some kind of inspiration, we would love to talk with you. Maybe you know somebody we should be talking with, maybe you have money yourself, I don't know what, but if something moves in your heart, please tell us what it is, because you're the kind of person we want to have on board with this project. You will lead us in a good direction. So this is how I approach fundraising, which is more of an unfundraising approach, because there's not the doing and the campaigning and the emails and the marketing, all of that stuff. I don't want to do it, okay, because it requires a lot of effort. What happened was 3 ladies who I'd never met before picked up on the video right here. Here's Ellie Sonali, who some of you may know. She's part of the Be the Cause network in Long Beach, very much connected to Manav Sadhana, and also was part of the AKAPA programs. And then Ellie. So they saw the video, became inspired. They said, Chris, we want to do something about this. How can we help? I said, okay, well, looking for this amount of money. Within 21 days, they raised all of the money. We even went over budget. We had something like $7,000, a little bit more than that in the end. I never asked them to raise the money. And I think they saw that video within 5 days of me posting it. Within 5 days, and I had never met these people in person. Sonali happened to be one of those people on Facebook who was following me but not saying anything, right? And was following my post, and then saw that, and something clicked. And then here's the construction project. All that waste was cleared out. These makeshift trenches were installed. This is a nearby river where all that sewage now drains into. And the point I like to make about this is the love and the goodwill that was involved in the creation of this project. So again, here we are connecting with the residents, especially the volunteers. I was a bit on the outside during this, but look at Sonali here. She's honoring the volunteers who worked on this project with a friendship bracelet. You have Ellie connecting with the kids. They're not grossed out that they're in the slum. They're not overwhelmed. They're connecting in the environment. I mean, that speaks for itself. And I want to read this. This is a PayPal donation I received because it's very much in the spirit of this love and the care that went into the project. This came in $500 donation, so not a small one, came in after the project was funded with a clear note to that effect. We don't need any more money for the project, it's funded. I hope this donation gives you a little cushion, see, a little cushion, to complete your work with a living smile. The donation is made today in honor of my brother-in-law Marcus, who is undergoing 18 hours of surgery to save his life. So maybe today we will save 6,000 plus 1. God bless you and keep you safe. Stephanie. So what that means is that there are 6,000 beneficiaries of this sewage project, and she felt like this donation that we didn't need was a prayer for her brother-in-law undergoing surgery. That's really powerful. And she's from a different country, she's far away, this is over email. But honestly, like that heart, that movement she felt from her heart to donate like that, it totally transfers to your project. I don't know how, it's a very mysterious process, but it does. And again, it directly impacts the sustainability. A construction intervention is easy. It's very easy to build a school, build whatever. It is much more tricky to then inspire the residents to care for the project. And the second half of this project, the one that I was primarily concerned with, because I knew how easy it was to build the trenches, was the need for daily maintenance and care of the trenches afterwards. Those residents did not sweep daily and get that stuff going into the nearby river that you just saw. We'd be in the same position that we were in before. So this is us meeting with the directly affected residents. That's the chairman of the community. I'm in the background. All beseeching them, please, please, please take care of these trenches. All our work would be for nothing if you don't. All of this, even some residents stepped forward and started saying, how we are in these slums, we got to get it together, because this was a really powerful gift that we received. And we checked in 3 times after this meeting to see how the trenches were being cared for or not. I was prepared for having programs, sanitation programs, a lot of follow-up with the residents. Every single time we checked in, there was no issue whatsoever. The trenches were being cared for, no problem. There are 2 reasons. It's very important to involve local labor with the construction of the projects. That's what we did in this community. Community members were involved in the labor. They were directly invested in the outcome of the project. They were being affected by this themselves, so of course they're going to be overseeing the care of it. Larger scale development projects, it'll be foreign companies coming into to another country and building all this infrastructure, and that maybe the sustainability won't be there because they're not connecting with the residents. They're not using local labor. I think using local labor is so important. And then number 2, the reason why the project was sustainable was because of the love and the goodwill that went into the project. Here's this group of people coming in, raising all of this money from a different country, connecting with the residents, having a good time, connecting with the kids, and cleaning up this big problem. It's a very subtle way of shaming somebody else without trying to shame somebody. Meaning, somebody there's some waste over there, whatever, you're not taking care of it, you probably know that you should be taking care of it. Here come 3 strangers, laughing, smiling, don't even tell you it's a problem. Come pick it up, maybe leave a note to, some loving message afterwards. You would receive that gift and be like, wow, I should have done that myself, right? A similar kind of principle is involved with this kind of intervention. I want to finish up where this journey began. On the Gandhi ashram in Ahmedabad. We're all familiar with the ashram, and I just want to make a statement about the Gandhi ashram. It's a very powerful place. Who here has been? Has anybody? Okay. Did you find it to be like a really transformative, catalytic environment? Yeah, it very much is, because Mahatma Gandhi's spirit is very much there. The values are very much there. Everything he stood for is really somehow embedded into the space, and just spending time there will somehow ignite something inside of you, of course, if you're open to it. And when I didn't have much knowledge of Gandhi going over to India, I knew he was a big person and everything, and he's quoted and all that. I really started to understand where he was coming from, not by studying, but by really just spending time in the ashram, reading the vows that all of the devotees had to take. And what they all boiled down to was this statement that you see coming into the ashram: forsake not truth, even unto death. So why Mahatma Gandhi was so powerful, in my opinion, and why he continues to inspire people from around the world is this. If you read his autobiography, in the introduction, before you get to chapter 1, he explains to you why he did all his work in the world. And this is almost verbatim what he says. He wanted to see God face to face. He said all his service work came from that place. I want to see God face to face. What a powerful idea. And the way he went about that was by constantly following his truth, by constantly listening to what he was hearing inside, what was right, and then acting on it. And why he really excelled at that was because he believed in this principle that you do not forsake that, even if it means death. There are very few of us on the earth today that have that level of commitment and dedication, and it's the reason why we look to somebody like Mahatma Gandhi to become profoundly inspired by that commitment, because I think we're all looking for it ourselves in some capacity. So that's what I got from the ashram, and I went through a personal transformation myself. It's a place where you really meet who you are. It encourages authenticity, because that place is all about truth. And Manasana is very much connected, to these values and the spirit, as we all know. It's an NGO based in the Gandhi Ashram. I just want to talk about this here. The service is external meditation. This is something that's talked about, internally when you're there. I don't know if everybody is familiar with this concept, but this is very much at the core of what Manasana is about. Using your service, your work in the external world, as a meditation. So on your natural human evolution, you start with your personal sadhana, your meditation, whatever the discipline is, and you create some kind of peaceful feelings, in your 30 minutes or an hour of meditation, and then you have how you are in the world. That's the second half. And in the beginning, what happens is I don't know if it's true for everybody here, but what is often the case is that you can develop the peaceful feelings and the bliss and the love, and as soon as somebody cuts you off in traffic, there goes the middle finger, there goes the aggression, there goes the cursing, and total loss of self, right? That's something eventually that has to be harmonized. So service gives us a beautiful opportunity to build that bridge, and certainly that's in the spirit of what Manav Sadhana is all about. And focus what I'm not saying. Focus what I'm not saying. We're not in the business of fixing problems, right? Even though they help however many thousands of children each month, it's a very personal experience for all of the volunteers who come and all the karyakartas, including all of the founders. The spirit that is Manav Sadhana is really coming from personal journeys, and this specific piece of it, the service as an external meditation. And through that, profound, miraculous results happen on their own. I mean, we're all familiar of the impact that this small NGO on the Gandhi Ashram makes. So I don't have time to go into the history of this leprosy community that I was living in, but I think we're all familiar about what leprosy is, the impact that it has for people in India, the untouchability and the stigma and the exclusion and all that. So I'm going to skip over it, but if we have a question, I can answer it later. So I lived in this community for just under a year. So here's a good photo of what leprosy does. For those who may not be familiar, it eats away at the extremities, the fingers and the toes, causes, obviously you lose your ability to care for yourself, and people get freaked out by your presence. They think they can catch the disease. You turn to begging, causes a number of issues. And even the kids in this community are not immune from the stigma. So the kids who do not have the disease, because everybody in the community has been treated, there hasn't been a new case in several years, nevertheless, the children face the same stigma at school. The other kids don't want to play with them, they get teased and get made fun of. Our community is considered low class, and so they face the same kind of issue. Even just recently in Tucson, I was on a TV program, and the interviewer would not shake my hand. He would not shake my hand. He was a bit of a germaphobe and everything, but he was really concerned because I spent all of that time with the leprosy community. That I went out to shake. He was like, "Oh, sorry, I can't do that." He wouldn't let me use his bathroom when I was at his house, And that was my first experience on a very small level of what these guys experience on a much larger level. It was really like, oh, it feels, distancing. Even though I was okay with it, at the same time, on a human level, your heart breaks a little bit. So you can imagine, what these folks face. And you may know that there's a certain shame in the Indian culture about developing the disease. A lot of the older ladies who were the original settlers of this community said they had to flee their native villages because of the shame that they felt they were putting on their family. So they left their families. Some of these ladies haven't seen their husbands or wives since, left children behind, and that's it. So Jayesh Bhai called this the loving community for a couple of reasons. Number one, he wanted to get the word leprosy out of the title of the community because that is stigmatizing. Number two, the community itself has a very loving spirit because it makes sense. If everybody is excluding you, everybody is saying, get out of here, we don't want you around, those who you share this disease with, you're going to bond together, create very strong ties. And that really shows up in the loving, generous spirit that this place had. So my journey here started with this young boy, Guru is his name. Those are his parents, and he has cerebral palsy. Are we familiar with that? Brain disorder, cerebral palsy. It's a brain dysfunction that he received at birth due to a complicated birth, and as a result he has no effective use of his body. He's basically paralyzed from the neck down. His mother has to do everything for him. Everything that you would do for an infant, she has to do for her son, and will have to do that for basically his entire life. So that includes feeding him, liquid food, spoon feeding him water because he can't chew solid food, wiping away drool because he can't keep the drool in his mouth, changing clothes because of the bathroom issue, on and on and on. This woman, Indu Ben, is a remarkable human being because Indian women, they're very, very busy, they work very hard. She has another infant son, she has a 5 or 6 year old son, she has her husband, she's cooking, she's cleaning, taking care of Guru. I never once saw her get stressed out by all of her work, and she also took care of me as well. From time to time, she'd just come bring tea to my room or make dinner for me, and always with a smile. Very, very amazing lady. The Indian women inspired me so much in this community, I cannot tell you. So here we are when we started. So when I first met Guru, I saw that he was in a very high state of need. He was hyperventilating on each breath. It was like like this, just laying on the floor. He had this fly net over his face, very skinny. He flies all around, and the situation there just seemed very desperate. So I talked to his parents to let him know about this form of traditional medicine that I practice that's very much related to Ayurvedic medicine. The parents agreed for me to come 2 times per day during all the days that I was at the community, and this is a very abbreviated story of what unfolded through that process. So here I am treating Guru. Always the kids would come in and join in on the sessions. I always had about 5 or 10 kids following me around, playing, giggling, laughing. This was my introduction to the kids. I would later do programs with them through this process here. This is about halfway through our treatment time. Remarkable transformation. In the beginning, again, the breath issue, he seemed very much dissociated, meaning physically present, psychologically, emotionally elsewhere, almost like vegetable-like condition. You could not really interact with him. Certainly the laughter would not be there. And here he is, laughing, interacting with us. Manasadhana also helped to fund Cerelac, which is an infant formula, infant food, which had some minerals, some protein. He's starting to gain some weight, and just amazing. Somebody was in the corner here, like doing something silly, but just the beautiful transformation. And then through Manasadhana's extensive connections in Ahmedabad, we were able to connect him with BP Hospital, Blind People's Hospital. They specialize in the free treatment of children with severe disabilities like Guru. So here he is doing hand exercises with a specialist, and through this introduction to the hospital, he will continue to receive free weekly care as long as his parents are involved in it, and free health insurance for life. And just, I want to speak about the trip that he needs to take to this hospital. So the leprosy community is on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. That's not by accident. Okay, it's official land, but it's as far away from the city center as possible. So that's also a great distance from all the hospitals. So he has to travel 1 hour in a rickshaw to get to the hospital. And that right there was a huge feat, because before he couldn't really go outside. He would start having epileptic-like fits because of the trauma and the new sensory input and everything. So this is a really beautiful example of how the traditional medicine, conventional medicine works together. So, he goes in the rickshaw now, and the busy Indian streets, the heat and everything. And his mother's still continuing with this today. And what's sweet, what his mother shared with me, was the fact that she had lost hope before I arrived. And that now she has a lot of hope. And I mean, this photo really demonstrates that. Even though there's not, he won't speak, he won't be able to walk and do all those kinds of things, the support structure is now there, and that has made a huge difference in her life. And again, this was not something I planned on doing, right? I met Guru because Jayesh Bhai took me and started introducing me to all the residents. And I just came upon Guru, and I became moved. This is where the phrase "moved by love" comes from. Something moves you inside, and then you follow that, just without question, because it's coming from your heart. And then typically what happens is results happen on their own without any form of effort. And this is a great testimony to that example. This is a change that wanted to happen. This change was waiting to happen. I just happened to be the one that was able to help move it along. So word got out that I was a doctor. People thought, I could heal diseases, and so, everybody started approaching me. I have a fever, infection, my arm hurts, This lady she's a leprosy patient, she goes out on the street begging each day. She had just had an eye operation. So I became very busy just sitting with, these folks, not having any kind of conversation except through what we were doing, through the treatment time. And this was my introduction to the community. And it seems like a bizarre way to get introduced to a community. But if you think about it, look at the symbol. right? This is another leprosy patient. What are you seeing here? A hands on a leprosy patient. I can't tell you how meaningful that is to not only the recipient, but also everybody who's watching. And there was, believe me, there's a whole row of people, behind me, like, what is going on here? And again, the joy, the kids doing, drawing after class. Not serious, but something serious also is happening at the same time. You can see this woman's foot is almost missing. And again, always the kids were involved during these treatments. Now let's see how we're doing on time. We're about an hour, so maybe another 5-10 minutes? Okay, yeah, we're almost at the end. Okay, so like I was saying, the kids always following me around, and through that process I got to know the children. And what I noticed with this particular group here was that they were really different than all the others. So again, we're in a slum area. You know how the kids are in slums, acting a bit crazy. They're not really willing to, help out when we're asking, doing crazy stuff, with the fireworks or whatever they're up to. And these kids were much different. They're always, interested with Manasadhana programs that were happening, always willing to help us out. And to me, they had a certain glow to them, a certain glow because they cared more than everybody else. They had a certain level of maturity. I thought that was really remarkable. So the inspiration I had, again, just following, something from my heart, an inspiration that I received, was why don't we pull this group aside? We'll do a special program with them, with the idea of creating future community service leaders. So I called this a loving leadership program. This is very much related to the concept of laddership that the service space in Jayeshbhai talks about. It's the same concept. Basically, teaching leadership without the CEO sort of bullying, ego-based approach, but really empowering and inspiring others to take initiative to solve community problems. That's really what service leadership is all about. So that's what we were experimenting with this group of children, and results were just really, really amazing. We did a number of activities based on values. Most of my projects that I do with the school, Brosis, with the kids here, if it's long-term, process-oriented, it usually starts in values. So when I was at Casa de Paz, on Friday, I love seeing your list of values, because it's very important. It sets the tone for your experiment, for your project, and then it helps to inform your activities and your actions. And what I find also is that those values tend to, especially if you embody them yourself and you're sharing about them honestly, lovingly, they tend to rub off on others, especially children. They can pick up on what you're sharing, and maybe they'll say, that's interesting, and it'll create some kind of behavior change. And if it does, that is exactly the kind of change that a teacher would want from the student, because it's self-realized behavior change. Most teachers force a child into learning a concept, through punishment and reward and through fear. This is much different. This is about sharing a value, why it's important, this is why I like it, and doing an activity around it maybe. I'm not saying like you need to adopt this, but this is, a value that we think is important. And it's more the planting seeds. So you're sharing. Maybe, 5 out of 12 get what you say and make some kind of change. If so, that's a brilliant day. Because inside, they heard what you said, interesting, that's right, there's something to that. And then act on it. And so they've made a change without you doing anything, right? Except sharing. So sharing is very, very important to me in general, but especially when I'm working, or I can't say you're working with children, but when you're, teaching and, mentoring kids. So, what I want to do, is this going to play? No.
Hello, my name is Anpuna.
Okay, I'll just let it go.
कृष्ण भैया हाई स्कूल हम लोग लीडर में हाई स्कूल लीडर में बन के हमारे को बहुत कुछ सीखने मिला। लीडर में आके हमारे को ये सीखने मिला कि आपकी जो भी मन में इच्छा हो पूरी करो, फिर हमें जो भी बोलना है खुल के बोलो, डरने का नहीं। और
See, sharing them at school, that's very important. We didn't ask them really to do that.
स्कूल में भी सिखाती कि कचरा पेटी में डालने का, और जैसा इन सब सिखाते हमारे को चौखा रहने का, स्वच्छता रहने का, और खुद भी भलाई करने का, दूसरे को भी भलाई करने का सोचने का। इसलिए आप जयेश भाई कृष्णा हमको सिखाते हैं कि इस स्वच्छता रहने का, उनके लिए थैंक यू। जयेश भाई को थैंक यू, कृष्णा भाई को थैंक यू।
She can speak.
Well, yeah, she can. And, it's not easy to get kids to speak on camera like that. We had just wrapped up our final exercise where they gave a 5-minute speech like this on the topic of their dream were dealing with 6th to 8th graders, that age, it was very hard for them at first. 5 minutes is not, I mean, even for adults, public speaking is really, scary to us all, and to speak in front of an audience for 5 minutes and, be coherent and engaging and all of that is not easy. So these kids, the first few attempts, it was like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, like a nail biter. And at the end, they really pulled through and gave some really amazing speeches. And she almost won. We did a competition around it. Sometimes it's helpful to add that element, give a little bit incentive, because they'll push a little bit harder because they want the reward and the acknowledgement. But yeah, and I just asked, I told them what this was being used for. Presentation, I'm going to put it on my website, other people can see it, and maybe that will cause interest in, bringing me to some kind of situation. But I said, please, just speak from your heart. Just share what you have to share, and it's exactly what they did. And the other point I wanted to make about what they're saying is that when you hear about the changes they're making, they weren't, except for throwing away litter, all the other changes were not really drilled. They just came out of the sharing session. So that's what we did. We met like this, shared, did meditation, said prayers, and talked and did activities. Very, very similar to Nemo's process with the Akatha children, the first half, the internal journey. Getting together every single day, doing activities, sharing. It's really powerful. So here's another one. This was my partner.
Hello, my name is Aruna and I am living to be Gandhi Leprosy Seva Sangh. I am 19 years old and 11th standard I am studying out, art student. कृष्णा भाई यहाँ पर आए और जो लीडरशिप के बच्चे चॉइस किए, बहुत ही मुश्किल होता है कि कौन से बच्चे में क्या हुनर है पहचाना, लेकिन वो उन्होंने उन बच्चों में से ढूंढ निकाला और उन्होंने कोशिश की कि वो जैसे उनसे बेहतर बना सके, क्योंकि इस्लाम एरिया के बच्चों में बहुत सारी बैड हैबिट्स होती है जिन्हें चेंज करना बहुत मुश्किल होता है, और खासकर कृष्णा भाई के लिए क्योंकि लैंग्वेज प्रॉब्लम बहुत होता है। उसके बावजूद उन्होंने इन बच्चों के साथ में काम किया और उन्हें इतना चेंज किया। जो बच्चे पहले हाथ नहीं धोते थे, नहाते नहीं थे बराबर, रेगुलरली अब नहाते हैं, हर रोज खाने से पहले हाथ धोते हैं, पेरेंट्स की रिस्पेक्ट करते हैं, और कचरा भी अच्छे से कचरा पेटी में डालते हैं, कहीं पे कचरा दिखे तो सफाई करने लगते हैं। कोई अकेले जा रहा हो, जैसे एजलेस अंकल आंटी हो तो उनकी हेल्प करते हैं, ग्रैंड मदर्स की हेल्प करते रहते हैं। तो उन बच्चों में सडनली इतना बदलाव आया है कि मुझे यकीन नहीं होता है कि ये कोई देखेगा तो कहेगा नहीं कि इस्लाम एरिया के बच्चे, इतना कुछ उनमें चेंज हो चुका है अभी, इतना अच्छा बिहेवियर, बात करना। और कृष्णा भाई दोनों का थैंक यू कहूँगी कि इतना अच्छा काम किया उन लोगों ने साथ में मिलकर। थैंक यू सो मच।
So that's Aruna. She's a really remarkable young lady. She taught herself English by watching Hollywood movies and studying in school. And so she was the one that was able to translate for me and was my liaison to the community and helped teach the kids as well. So just one more. So I love these videos. Oh, I know I did. I think I blacked out the screen. What happened?
My name is Barna. I live in Gandhi Leprosy Seva Sangh. अलग-अलग जगह में जाके सेवा के बारे में सीखते हैं, सफाई के बारे में सीखते हैं। गांधी लेप्रोसी में तो कोई इधर आते नहीं थे, भिखारी लोग भिखारी होते थे, कोई भी नहीं आते थे, वो लोग आज ऐसा कोई भी आते नहीं थे। और इधर कृष्णा भाई आया, हम केला फोन में से कृष्णा भाई इधर आया और कृष्णा भाई ने हमको लीडर में चुना। बोला तो मैं कचरा पे मम्मी नहीं डालती थी, सेवा भी नहीं करती थी और मम्मी की हेल्प भी नहीं करती थी। अभी क्रिस भाई आया, हमको लीडर में चुना और मैं तब से सेवा करती हूँ, सफाई करती हूँ और दादी की मदद करती हूँ। कृष्णा भाई हमको बहुत कुछ सिखाते हैं, नाटी भी हमको बहुत कुछ सिखाते हैं। आप सब लोग हमको दूर बैठ के मदद करते हैं, इसलिए थैंक यू।
Yeah, so I want to say for the record, and also I'm being filmed here, that I had a lot of help with this program. It wasn't just me and Aruna. Jayesh Bhai visited a lot of folks from Manasadna visited. They had interaction with some outstanding human beings. Uday Bhai visited, they got to know Gopal Dada, they visited ESI at Sugard if you've been there. And just, the environments that they were involved in, visiting Jagabai, going to Manasadna, again, the environment's having a very profound impact on you. So it wasn't just me. So thank you to everybody else who may be watching who helped with these kids. Change was remarkable. So yeah, I don't have time to go through this. So we built a playground. That was one of the other projects, really, really interesting project, especially the volunteer component. Funding as well. Funding for this project also happened automatically. What I want to make a point of, because it's the classic ripple effect. Here are neighbors looking on during the playground opening. So these are neighbors that, you know, would be considering our community low class, not really engaging with us, thoroughly engaged during the opening day because of drums. There was such pomp, you know, big welcoming ceremony for everybody who was arriving, VIPs from the community, government administrators, you know. They were like, what is happening here? And then they also asked if their children could then play in our playground. And of course we said yes. So this was a bridge being built between these two communities. Completely not something we had in mind. We just wanted to give the kids a place to play. But that's what's awesome about doing this kind of work. When you start a loving process, you know, it's like the pay it forward, give it forward. It tends to inspire, you know, ripple effects we call them, that you don't foresee, but end up doing really incredible things, again, on their own, effortlessly. So through no design or purpose of my own, through just the length of time that I was there, hands-on with the leprosy patients, the time with Guru, the time with the kids, the playground, I mean, this is just a fraction of what we did in the community. We did a lot of stuff. I rose to be a community leader there. I was really respected. I had a certain degree of authority. I could start projects and people would be on board with them. When guests would come to the community, they would take them to my room and introduce them to me, even though there was no language happening between us, but they just felt like that was the appropriate thing to do. Let's bring him to Krishna Bhai, and then he'll figure out what to do with it, something like that. It was really amazing. You can see it here in some of these photos. I was always out cleaning as well. Again, I really enjoy the cleaning. And you know, this task is not a normal task for men in India, but I really enjoyed it, especially these. These are my favorite jadus because, you know, they move so much dirt. You know, and it's different than sweeping. You really feel the contact with the earth this way, and it's like a meditation. You know, so I enjoyed this, and it was morning and evening religiously. You know, so we doing the safai. I put the bhajans on, and became, you know, I think a little bit more of a community event than it was before. Everybody's just doing their routine, you know, cleaning. These are all leprosy patients who beg in the community. Now, Vinny and I were talking about this on the car ride over.
So they beg in the community?
They're all beggars, yeah. And I never got to know them on that level. These are really like my grandmothers. We gave a free dinner for them every single night except Sunday. They're the neediest in the community. They left all of their families behind when they fled their villages. They're all alone in the community. They're only earning about 50 cents a day, not eating so well. So that was one of Manasanda's programs.
And where exactly is this community located?
In Ahmedabad.
Where, I mean, you said it's outskirts, right?
Yeah, outskirts. Do you know Ahmedabad? Like
yeah,
Amrawati. Oh, okay, Rabari Colony? You know Rabari Colony?
Well, no, okay.
But Amrawati.
Okay.
Yeah, that section.
Okay.
So it was really interesting getting to know these ladies as human beings versus beggars. You know how beggars are in India. You know, they're very in your face, very persistent, and you don't have an opportunity to get to know the human being behind the beggar, but it's there. I got to meet them here. This is a very, very funny story. The architect who worked on the playground project, who really led the process and created all the designs, when we were doing the construction, he went outside of the community to run an errand and buy a hammer or something like that. And he met one of these ladies, or one of the beggars in the community, and she approached him and was, you know, asking for money. And his name is Jesus. You may have heard of Jesus. And he was like, no, Krishna Bhai, Mitra, Krishna Bhai, Mitra, Krishna Bhai is my friend, Krishna Bhai is my friend. And she was like, oh, sorry. And she backed off because of you know, the relationship that we had. Now, another very, very interesting thing. I was never asked for money once in this community. Never asked for money once, even though I was living amongst actual beggars. I can't tell you how many times I got asked for money in Africa. It was an ongoing thing that really wore me out after time. You know, sponsor my kids, sponsor my education, just this. You know, just this. I found the way these people and Indians handle poverty was really remarkable. It was much different than how it's handled in Africa. There was a higher level of desperation around the poverty in Africa, and I didn't really see that in this community. My mother visited this community and had such a positive experience. We did incredible, like dancing, Gurba, you know, rangolis all over the place. She just was like, wow, this is an amazing place. And it would have shocked her if I told her that she had just come into a leprosy community with people that are serving her earn about 50 cents a day.
I think partly because Ahmedabad is doing well economically compared to most other part of the country also.
Maybe, yeah. Although this community has, its financial challenges.
Yeah, sure.
But I think just...
but overall, they're bringing everyone up.
Yeah, I think there's something about the tradition, yeah.
Just in terms of time, how much time do you think you have?
Oh, that's right. We
have
have
a question.
Yeah, sure, okay. So, that's right. Okay. So it really became like family at this community. That's the point. And this was one of the last programs that I launched, an entire day of sanitation with the entire community. The community has about 400 members. The idea was once a month on a Saturday for half a day, the entire community get together and clean up the community. Okay, we're in a slum area. I have people in this community who are not so much my fan, and I had very low expectations for how this day would unfold. And this is not an easy program to launch. This is not an easy program to launch. It would have been tricky for somebody inside of this community. And I can't tell you how well this day turned out. So many people came, and those who weren't involved in the beginning, they saw how much fun everybody else was having, all of a sudden picked up a broom and joined in. And I heard comments like, why haven't we been doing this before? This was one of the last things I did. And again, it was just based on inspiration, a hunch. I thought it'd be a good thing to do, especially with the kids, because the kids are basically consuming all day, right? Watching TV, eating stuff, and why don't you pick up a broom from time to time and clean up with everybody? Because again, the connection to the space, the responsibility, the sense of maturity, and all of that. Just amazing, amazing day. And it's a bit testimony to the position I had in the community, that I could actually do this. But again, it was something that wanted to happen, and they're still continuing with this program, which I find amazing. And I learned through this process of being a community leader and that last project, all I did was give a little push. I wasn't like handing out flyers or doing a lot of campaigning like we should do this. It was an idea I simply shared with the president of the community. He said, okay. I took my team of kids. We started going door to door, explaining that it was this Saturday, please join us, and if not, okay. And we had a really good result. And I learned how easy it is to design for healthy, loving communities. I really feel we all want to do the right thing. Maybe it just requires a little bit of a push from somebody who has earned respect through actual work and service, especially love-based service. It's different than the kind of leadership we have now, where it's great oratory and speeches on TV. We don't actually connect so much with our leaders, and I think that's missing in our communities and in our society. And I think there's a reason I was able to have such success, because of the hands-on manual labor and just understanding people. It's a little bit of a push in the right direction, and then something else takes over. So I want to end on this story. It's a very sweet story to end on. Again, this was my partner at the leprosy community for the entire year, Aruna. We were really fond of each other. And I always ask this question if it's an Indian audience. Does anybody see anything wrong in this photo? Except Vinya. Anything wrong in this photo? Okay, what's wrong is that we're hugging. We're not allowed to hug, right? I'm not allowed to hug. And in this moment, this is my last day in India. At the airport, there's a bunch of people saying goodbye to me, and she was the last one to say goodbye. She launches into this big hug. She says, forget what my culture says, and just really follow that movement in her heart. She really let go of a belief system and just followed the movement. I think that's what we're all looking to do in our personal lives, especially during this time. And the point is to just do it, to let go of the old belief, whatever the tradition says, whatever the culture says. If there is a block from the government, if there is a block from whatever parent or authority figure, to just follow the movement in your heart. Nothing but good things can come from that. The other thing that was very cool was the fact that she was tearing, she was crying during this moment. And her father had just died from leprosy 4 years prior. And she said that she cried the day her dad died, but she had not cried a day since. And I can tell you from my background in psychology, that's not healthy. She's very, very tough. She even said stuff like, oh, the guy who will marry me is going to be an unlucky man because I'm such an angry woman. And she had a very tough exterior. She's not an angry woman. She's a very loving, caring person. But she had a very tough exterior. And that's exactly what happens when there's unresolved grief like that. You get very tough and stern because there's all that emotion hanging out in there. It's a way to cope with it. And here she was just crying, this beautiful hug. And I thought, wow, what an amazing way to end that beautiful journey on in India, and a great way to end this presentation with you all. So thank you so, so much from the heart for giving me this opportunity to share with you. I think what would be good is just have a couple moments of silence, and then we can do a short sharing session, although I know Vinya is eager to take off, is that right? So maybe...
Questions. I just wanted to get them one. It's very sweet. She's out there. She's